The world became a blur of pounding noise and screaming motion. As soon as my hellfire grenade landed at the Grand Viceroy's feet, both of her royal guards flung themselves on top of it. Pritiara's eyes went wide with shock. She hurled herself through the air, trying to put as much space between herself and the explosion as she possibly could. I bolted forward, flinging my full weight at Xaden and knocking him to the floor. The hellfire grenade exploded in a blazing plume of boiling orange and searing red. Even with all of their advanced armor and state-of-the-art cybernetics, the royal guards were blown into charred smithereens. Tendrils of insatiable flame hissed and spat at the Tildrake, clawing at its shadowy form. The monster let out a blood-chilling shriek, trying to smother the wisps of fire that were eating their way into its body of living shadow. At first I thought it was a scream of pain, and then I realized it was one of fury. I hadn't hurt the Tildrake. I just made it angry. Blackened chunks of the royal guard splattered against the circle of gigantic white stones, staining them with dark blood and singed meat. I pulled Victoria out of my handbag, slashing through the spindly coils of wire that were wrapped around Xaden's hands. "Run!" I screamed at him, hoisting myself up onto my feet and bolting off into the dense woodland. Xaden came sprinting after me, ripping away the tape that covered his mouth. "You have no idea how happy I am to see you," Xaden babbled as we sprinted beneath a cover of tower-like trees. "I thought I was fucked." "We're not out of the woods yet," I replied. "Literally," Xaden said with a nervous laugh. I felt my legs throbbing with hot pain, but I kept on pushing them to their limit. The Grand Viceroy had probably sent her garrison of soldiers out hunting for us, and I had no intention of getting caught. Gnarled trees closed in around us on all sides, reaching out with their twisted branches. One especially sharp branch sliced through my cheek as I dashed past it, drawing a sputtering string of blood. "Fuck!" I hissed beneath my breath. There was a bulky metal ring on one of Xaden's fingers that had a smooth disc at its head. The ring looked utterly unremarkable, but when he pressed down on the disc with his palm, it let out a shrill electric beep. The smooth metal began to pulse with a faint blue light. "Camouflage tracker," he said by way of explanation, in between raspy heaps for breath. "Inconspicuous enough in its design that nobody ever pays it much notice." "How often do you get kidnapped?" I spluttered, my whole body spasming with exhaustion. "Way too often," Xaden admitted. "This will tell Eudora where we are. Once we're out of the woods, she'll swing by and pick us up." It dawned on me then that by saving Xaden, I'd utterly fucked myself. I'd be branded as a terrorist and a fugitive. I'd destroyed the security of my quiet, boring life with one stupid act of impulse. I'd made an enemy of the most powerful person in the country. Fuck! I snarled in frustration. "I need Isolde to take us back to my house. I've got to warn Griff." "Your gaff is the first place they'll look for you, Bethan," Xaden protested. "We can't risk it." "I stuck my neck out for you, and now you're gonna stick your neck out for me," I growled. "I'm not letting Ketheru throw my boyfriend into a fucking camp. This isn't up for debate." It hadn't even been 24 hours since the start of my plan to be a better girlfriend, and I'd already put my partner's life in danger. I'd made a conscious decision to steer clear of whatever supernatural freak show Xaden and Major Blygraph had tried to drag me into, yet now I'd been pulled deeper into the heart of it. Why was I trying to be good? What proof was there that goodness was anything more than a fairy tale, used to scare the gullible into submission? Life was a chaotic hellstorm of tragedy and pain. There was no place in the chaos for goodness. "You have chosen poorly," a gravelly voice rattled around inside my head. I had assumed they were my own thoughts, but then I realized it was the voice of the Tildrake. "If you will not be our Agora, then you will be our prey," the spectral voice promised. "Have a go if you think you're hard enough," I replied, shaking the thoughts in my brain back at the monster, as if we were playing psychic tennis. "Bigger bastards than you have tried to hurt me." A shrill scratchy cackle sounded like rusted metal being scraped against stone screeched inside my head. There are many ways we can hurt you, the Tildrake threatened. After running for so long that I probably sweated out a stone, Zayden and I burst out of the dense woods. A hatchback with a chipped paint job came screaming down the road, as if it were trying to outrun the apocalypse. Clouds of white steam hissed out from underneath its wheels. The car pulled up next to us with an ear-splitting screech. We flung ourselves across the back seats, and the hatchback sped off up a stretch of serpentine asphalt. What is she doing here? Major Balvercroft glared at me, both hands clenched tightly around the steering wheel. She saved this little bitch boy's life, I barked back at Isolde. You better rein your neck all the fucking way in. She did save me, Major. Zayden nodded, his chest rising and falling with each juddering gasp for air. Pissiara and her cronies were about to serve me up to the Black Bride before Bethan stepped in. I owe her. Big time. The car's radio was sputtering out a garbled hodgepodge of rattling noise. It sounded as if the newsreader was talking through a tin can as he solemnly announced that Zhao Haoyan had declared war on Zioros. Isolde's brow furrowed, while she turned her attention back to the road ahead of us. She twisted a dial on the radio, the report of Generalissimo Wufeng's countless atrocities growing louder and louder. Reports claim that Havazat Banshee bombs have been used in a skirmish in Kozogrunia. The newsreader reported in a somber tone. Zhao Haoyan's press secretary insisted that the bombs were used strictly as a means to illuminate the position of enemy combatants. I retaliated by taking a pen out of my handbag and clicking it in the most vexing, tuneless rhythm I could muster. She turned the radio off. Victory was mine. The Black Bride was there, Isolde asked Zayden in an irritated mumble. The Black Bride? I raised one eyebrow. It's what we call the Tildrake that the Grand Viceroy summoned, Zayden told me. We don't know what any of their names are, so we go off of what they look like. There's no such thing as a nice Tildrake, but the Black Bride is really fucking nasty. Zayden's shoulders slumped, and his voice had steadily grown quieter and quieter. I could practically feel pain emanating off of him in waves. There was something about the Black Bride that hit him in an incredibly personal place. Whatever the history between Zayden and the monster was, I had more pressing matters to deal with. I knew that a calamitous rain of shit was about to come surging down from the heavens, and the window of time I had to grab an umbrella was getting smaller and smaller. I leant forwards and tapped the chunky sat-nav on Isolde's dashboard. Wherever you're planning on running away to, we need to pick up my boyfriend first, I told Isolde. Me helping you has thrown him right under the fucking bus. How the hell did you find someone who hates themselves enough to date you? She scoffed. What's your love life looking like, Isolde? I asked. Have you figured out all the special settings on your robot arm yet? Do as she asks, Major, Zayden commanded with uncharacteristic firmness. It's a matter of honor. Any hint of unwillingness on Isolde's ragged features evaporated. Very well, the Major said with a steely nod. It is a matter of honor. As we drew nearer to my house, Isolde slowed the car to a more leisurely pace. We were in a residential area now, and if we zoomed about like maniacs, we'd draw unwanted attention. This was the kind of area where muggings were rare. Children mostly behaved themselves, and the imperious neighborhood watch were quick to report troublemakers to the police. Whilst the salary that Ramakadash paid me was a respectable amount above the national average, I wouldn't been able to afford my place on the wages of a claims processor. The money I got for selling Aimer crack had waited in my savings account, gathering interest throughout my 3 years with Sithwraith. I'd used a chunk of it to buy myself an adequate house in a nice enough neighborhood, whilst the rest sat sensibly in my rainy day fund. A not insubstantial amount I'd pissed down the drain when I got really into betting on pit fighting, coupled with the unquenchable coke habit of my early 20s. There could be soldiers, or even a Tildrake waiting for you in there, Isolde said as she killed the engine. Make sure you take a smoke stick with you. Those are those weird silver flares, right? I asked. Zayden nodded. They're made from Ariagentum, he explained. It's the only thing that we know for certain can kill a Tildrake, although I reckon a rocket launcher could probably do some damage. Ariagentum was a ludicrously rare silver metal that was exclusive to Gultiska. It had been sacred to the druids of ancient history, and superstitious types claimed that Ariagentum had holy properties. During the modern day of the Zavashi occupation, savvy tycoons made a pretty penny selling jewellery crafted from Ariagentum to an especially rich and famous client base. So our only guaranteed weapon against a Tildrake is a metal that's so rare that a pinky ring made from it costs about 3 years on minimum wage. I groaned faintly as I spoke. Convenient, isn't it? Isolde let out a humorless laugh. That's why we only have itty-bitty splinters of Ariagentum in the smokesticks. I'm an itty-bitty bus driver, Zayden said, out of nowhere. Isolde and I both stared at him blankly. Sorry. Don't you remember that guy at the coffee shop? Zayden stared expectantly at Major Blygraph. Zayden, what the fuck are you talking about? He was kicking off about them making his coffee before we paid for it. The baristas insisted that he had to pay for it first. He started shouting about how they were being disrespectful. One of the shopping centre's security guards came in and dragged him out, and the whole time he was screaming about how he wasn't a threat, and he kept repeating, I'm an itty-bitty bus driver, else they threw him out. Isolde and I exchanged a puzzled look. I literally have no memory of that happening, Major Blygraph said in a flat voice. Zayden's smile drooped into a disappointed scowl. As riveting as this is, can we go kidnap my boyfriend? I prompted. Zayden and I made our way into the house, as Isolde waited in the car. I took my handbag with me, whilst he fished a smoke stick and a service revolver out of the car's glove compartment. Super inconspicuous, I muttered as I unlocked the front door. Never hurts to be prepared, Zayden replied. Worried you'll get kidnapped again? I asked, lightly teasing him. People do tend to fuck with you less if you shove a gun in their face, he smirked. He's still out there, you know. And he's closer than you think. A stretch of dark hallway extended before us. Hello? I called out. There was no reply. A chill flitted down my spine as I noticed how eerily quiet the house was. There was no creaking footsteps, no metallic popping of the radio, no warm hum of the cooker. The hallways felt claustrophobic in a way that it never had before. The walls seemed to close in around me, choking me, as if I were crawling through a subterranean tunnel on my belly, with wet stones scraping against my head. The head of a stag I'd shot a few months ago was mounted on one wall, its magnificent antlers forming a crown around its striking features. That trophy had filled me with pride, but now its rich, amber eyes made me feel as if I were being watched. A soft whimper cut through the silence. Hello? I called out again. Still no response. Just the same shaky whimpering. We found Griff in the living room, sitting on the sofa. The TV was switched off, as were all of the lights in the house. He was perched in the darkness, his breathing a pained rasping that reverberated harshly through the living room. The most recent issue of Guns of Gultiska was splayed out across our coffee table, one corner still folded from where I'd been reading about Havazat's new shotgun, the Dragon Slayer. There was something wrong with Griff. His forehead was glossy with sweat, and there was a faint yet noticeable tremble quivering through his body. Griff's eyes were fixed in a wide, terror-filled stare, whilst he grasped at his left arm with shaky fingers. Sweetheart, what's wrong? I asked him, a knot of panic tightening in my chest. My arm, Griff said in a scratchy whisper. I nervously stepped towards him. An angry purple crack had corroded through the flesh beneath Griff's left wrist. Wraith-like wisps of black mist were leaking out of the violet scar and flittering up into the sky like smoke trailing off of a cigarette. It was identical to the mist that had surrounded the Tildrake. My throat became dry, and the knot in my chest grew into an agonizing stab of dread. Zayden, I murmured. What's happened to him? Zayden Cole looked at me with eyes that were hemmed by wobbling teardrops. Not again, Zayden said quietly. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Griff let out a pained gasp as the gash began to fester and spread. Deep zigzags wriggled across his skin like skittering insects, devouring more and more flesh with horrifying speed. Soon, Griff's entire left arm was riddled with sickly purple and necrotic black. Do something! I screamed at Zayden. You're the fucking expert! Help him! Effie! Griff shot me a pleading look of pure terror. Effie, please. Griff hunched up into a ball as another convulsion rocked his body. He dug his fingernails into the matter of his infected arm, and a gush of rancid purple ooze began to retch and sputter out of the slit in fat globules. The putrescent stink that flooded the living room was overwhelming, making me gag and heave. Once the Tildrake have latched onto someone, there's nothing we can do. Zayden's voice was heavy with remorse. We can stop them from burrowing inside, but once they've broken through, it's all over. I'm sorry, Bethan. Zayden gripped the smoke stick in one hand. Ending Griff's pain is the only kindness I can offer you. One of the first things I had noticed about Griff Crofer had been his nervous, jittery smile. I remembered him smiling at me from across the venue, peeking out amidst the rest of the sweaty crowd. Griff had always been an anxious person, but he used to have a sort of quiet optimism to him. It was like he knew how grim life could be, yet he still hoped the future had something brighter waiting for him. He should have known better. He shouldn't have smiled at me. He should have run away screaming from the storm called Bethan. He's not a fucking dog! I screamed at Zayden. Suddenly, Griff's whole body went still, and there were no howls of pain or fearful trembles. His gaze snapped towards me, and I saw that his eyes had been consumed by unbroken darkness, those inky, unfeeling orbs of pure black, locked onto me in a single mechanical motion. How astonishing! A voice that sounded nothing like Griff rolled out of his body. In spite of all of your crimes, he really did love you. You were his world. If only he'd known how little you cared for him. I curled my hands into fists so tight that I broke my skin, drawing trails of gushing blood. Rage surged through me with such ferocity that I felt dizzy. Zayden knows how that feels. The thing that was puppeting Griff cackled. That's why he's so fond of you. You remind him of his dearly departed, cold and cruel lover. Did you know that Zayden isn't even his real name? I wasn't processing what the Tildrake was saying. It was just noise. I was drowning beneath an ocean of burning hatred. To think that Ragora could... I'm not your fucking Ragora! I yanked the smoke stick out of Zayden's hand, twisting the mechanism that ignited it, and then thrust the burning rod straight into the face that had once belonged to my boyfriend. I shrieked, twisting the smoke stick deeper and deeper into the Tildrake's face. Glowing Ariagenta melted through flesh and bone, as if it were a wrecking ball knocking down a wall. The Tildrake's screams were reduced to a wet burble, smothered beneath the roaring silver flame that had engulfed its entire head. Griff's body shook and shuddered like an epileptic experiencing a fit, arms and legs thrashing about erratically. I kept on pushing until the smoke stick burst out of the back of the charred cavern that had been Griff's skull. By the time I finally let go, I was soaked in dark gristle, and my fingers were covered in throbbing red burns. Griff's corpse slumped off of the sofa and landed in a heap on the floor, the sputtering remains of the smoke stick protruding from the bloody smear of his head. belching out dying strands of silvery fire. The adrenaline that had been surging through me drained out of my body, and I found myself crashing down onto the carpet. Drenched in blood and sinew, I curled up next to the blistering husk of my boyfriend. "You deserved so much better," I whispered to Griff's blackened remains. "I wish you'd never met me." My memories of leaving the house are hazy. I can faintly remember trudging back to the car, every inch of me soaked in dark, syrupy red. I'm not sure if it was Zayden or Isolde that gave me a pack of wet wipes to clean myself off with. Somebody handed me a spare change of clothes from the car boot, but they were obviously tailored to Isolde's huge, brawny frame, and they hung off of me in a way that made me look like a child playing dress-up. I was silent for the entire journey. I gazed blankly into nothingness, utterly numb to whatever was going on around me. Griff was gone. My bland, cookie-cutter boyfriend, who I had been itching to get rid of, was dead. Surely that was a good thing. It didn't feel like a good thing. I felt as if a yawning abyss was tearing its way through my chest. It was like a black hole had been birthed inside my ribcage, and it was devouring every twinkle of light that got caught in its hungry orbit. Maybe I'd liked having him around more than I realized. He had been comforting and reliable. I knew he'd always be there when I got home, like an obedient dog. But it was more than that, wasn't it? I was never going to wake up to him bringing me breakfast in bed. I was never going to feel him giving me little scratches on my head. I was never going to cuddle up on the sofa with him, watching my old bootlegs of Professor Falconpond. Zayden and Isolde's murmured conversation drifted around me in a murky garble. "I should have known it would go after her loved ones," Zayden scolded himself. "She saved my life, and I fucked hers up." "This isn't your fault," Isolde replied firmly. "How many times have I told you to stop reading everything as a personal feeling? You remember when the Von girl got raped coming home from school? You are the same then." "You know the Black Bride targets children," Zayden snapped. "And you know why I make the Black Bride my focus." "You're too close to that one," Isolde told him. "You've lost your objectivity." "If the Black Bride had taken your kid, would you want some detached, unfeeling fuck looking into it?" Zayden responded sharply. I was vaguely aware of the car stopping. The doors opened with a click, and I shambled behind Zayden and Major Balvercroft with the empty-eyed lethargy of a zombie. A blocky cottage rose up in front of us. It was an ugly jumble of dull white bricks and dim brown roof tiles. It looked like the sort of place that annoying pensioners would go feral for. I suddenly remembered that Griff and I were supposed to be vacationing in Gulario at the end of the month. I supposed that I would be sunbathing and drinking cocktails by myself. The other two cracked the lodge's door open and shuffled inside, so I followed sluggishly behind them. What greeted us was a muted grey room that was even more lackluster than the exterior. A dusty wooden shelving unit stuffed full of books was the only noteworthy piece of furniture. "You'll love this next part," Zayden said, shooting me an especially pathetic smile. "What I would love is for my boyfriend to come back to life," I replied bitchily. "The Taildrake killed my boyfriend too," Zayden clumsily babbled. "They love to rock up and take a great big shit all over your happiness. There's probably enough of us who have lost loved ones to the Taildrake that we could start a support circle. We'd be like one of those alcoholic groups, just with even more horrific trauma." I didn't reply. "Hi, I'm Zayden," he mimed, "and the love of my life died saving me from a giant, terrifying monster." "Perhaps now is not the time for this, Zayden," Isolde prompted firmly. His shoulders slumped in defeat. Zayden grabbed hold of a thick green book, yanking it about halfway free from the shelving unit. The secret lever, disguised as a book, was pretty cool, but I was too miserable to be impressed. The sound of whirring mechanisms clunked through the room, whilst the bookcase/door swung open. We were greeted by a grubby brick passageway, partially obscured by rolling darkness. "If you say ta-da, I'm going to kick you in the balls," I graciously warned Zayden.
"I'll always be little. I'll never get to grow up. You took that away from me."
His elders stayed in the cottage, while Zayden ushered me down the passageway.
"Go safely, Captain Turner Wickruth," she called after me. "Even the darkest nights give way to the dawn."
An uneventful walk down a zigzag of subterranean tunnels eventually opened up into a cavern that seemed as though it was being used as a kind of underground library. Ornate wooden bookcases stretched up to the craggy ceiling, packed tightly with a treasury of volumes that ranged from small and life to large and chunky. The books looked as if they belonged in the collection of some eccentric old wizard from a fantasy novel. And the fact that we were standing in a secret underground cavern only added to the feeling of fantasticality. In front of us was a stout man in a white shirt and black suspenders, who looked to be searching for a specific book amidst the collection of different tomes. "Zayden, old boy," a smile stretched across his doughy face. "Who's this curvaceous creature you've got with you?"
"Not got time for small talk,"
Zayden mumbled in a somewhat irritable manner.
"We need to see the boss."
The stranger snapped his fingers, and a wobbling fleck of orange flame fizzled at the end of his thumb. I would have assumed it was an illusion, but I could feel the pulsing warmth that purred out of the fire as it swayed and teetered. "Zayden hasn't mastered pyromancy yet," the chunky man told me.
"I've always been a fiery sort."
The dancing flame atop his thumb flickered out as swiftly as it had appeared. Neat. I didn't care enough to try and look cool by hiding my interest. "I'm Bethan." He was a large, noticeably plump figure with big, beefy arms and a round belly. He had a neatly trimmed dark beard fringed with a few grey bristles, and a mop of chocolatey curls sat atop his head.
"I'm Zin,"
the portly man said, shooting me a flirty wink. "Zin Thorath. Welcome to the Balvercroft Society." I know my boyfriend had just died, but the dad bod was kind of doing it for me, and it's always nice to feel desired. "If you want to learn more about magic, I'm your man," Zin proclaimed arrogantly. "Zayden's too busy chasing up spooky stories about boogeymen and missing children to teach you anything useful." "You can chat later," Zayden butted in. "Mr. Balvercroft wants to speak to her." We headed off down an almost identical passageway. Later on, I would find out that the cave system the Balvercroft Society made their home in used to be a series of looping mines which threaded beneath the ruins of the Society's old headquarters. After the Great Revolution, the Society had retreated underground to avoid the wrath of the Commodore Party, and later the Zivashi occupation. "Is Zin seeing anyone?" I asked Zayden. "And if he is, how open is he to cheating on them?" I thought about being underneath Zin, with his bulk pressing down on me. I thought it would be warm and comforting, like curling up in a weighted blanket. "Between you and me, Zin is kind of a prick." Zayden lowered his voice, like he was a naughty child trying to hide something from their teacher. "He acts like he's some high and mighty authority on the supernatural, but all he does is read a lot of books." "Do you think Pritiara is supernatural?" I pondered. "She is, like, weirdly calm all of the time. If I found out she was a creepy monster pretending to be a human, I wouldn't be even slightly surprised." "I don't think she's magic," Zayden grunted, "unless being so staggeringly autistic that you act like a lizard person counts as magic." Considering Zayden's proclivity for oblivious babbling, and the fact that our first conversation had been about a kids' TV show, I found myself thinking of stones and glass houses. "What did Zin mean about missing children?" I asked him. He waved one hand dismissively. "My pet project," Zayden murmured uncomfortably. "Zin says it's all ghost stories and nonsense, but I think the Black Bride might be connected to some unsolved cases of missing children. If you really want to know more, I'll walk you through it another time. You've had enough misery and horror for now." "I don't scare easily," I laughed. Zayden fixed me with a grim stare. You won't be so glib once you've heard the whole story, he promised.
The little ones have the sweetest screams.
We pressed on down a stretch of rocky passageways, our footsteps echoing off of firm stone. You seem to be handling all of this weirdness pretty well, Zayden observed. Most people are a bit freaked out when they get thrown into our world of magic and monsters. My life has never not been weird, I replied. Once you've been to Vasivalin, nothing scares you anymore. Zayden exploded in a boisterous boom of laughter. You've been to Vasivalin? A humongous grin scratched across his face. What was it like? Whatever sexy, scandalous den of delights you're picturing, the real thing is way less exciting and way more horrifying, I smirked. Griff and I went during our honeymoon phase, and we were both scarred for life. Both of us wanted to get slapped about by buff women in leather, but what we got instead was unwashed troglodytes doing age play. Plus, my bodysuit kept riding up my crack. The whole thing was deeply fucking traumatizing. Did you check their schedule? Zayden asked. He probably went on DDLG night or something. Utter nonsense. I shuddered. Any venue that encourages grown adults to dress up in dummies and fucking nappies should be burned to the ground, and anyone who attends should be put in front of a firing squad. A faint smirk tugged at Zayden's lips. You would have gotten on so well with my partner, he chuckled. I can vividly remember us going to one of my mate's poetry readings, and Darren saying, shoving a dull object through my eye and into my brain would have been less painful when we left. Man after my own heart, I said with a grin. Zayden guided me through a spindly network of underground tunnels, cold stone surrounding us on all sides. Eventually, we came to a large wooden door, which was carved with Gultiskrig runes, similar to the ones in Amacrag. My mind wandered away from nauseating sex clubs and terrible poetry, and back to the bitch queen of Gultiska. What's Pretty Ara's endgame? I asked him. You must have some idea what she gets out of this pact with the Tildrake. Like every soulless billionaire and politician, she cares more about power than she does about people, Zayden said with audible disgust. That piqued my interest. I took a moment to choose my next words carefully. The Tildrake will make her more powerful? It's not the Tildrake she wants, Zayden told me. Those are just a side effect. She wants the mist. The power she craves is what slumbers in the mist. Gortiska used to be coated in it, but early humans beat the Tildrake back and damn near wiped them out. Wielding weapons wrought from Ariagentum, the Druids hunted them to the brink of extinction. The old faith was abandoned, and the Tildrake were forgotten, little by little. As the centuries flickered by, they've come creeping back into Gortiska. If what she wants is in the mist, then she'll stop at nothing to get it, I told Zayden. She isn't the sort of woman to let a few million casualties give her pause. He nodded in agreement. The Grand Viceroy will hang Gortiska to the Tildrake on a silver platter if it gets her what she wants. Zayden pointed to the wooden door. Have a chat with the man in charge, he said. Nobody knows more about what's going down than Mr. Balvercroft. The chamber I stepped into was an impressive fusion of swanky furnishings and flashy ornaments. Yet, my attention was drawn straight to the figure sat at the far end of the room. We've all seen pretty people before. That's nothing especially noteworthy. But the man I made eye contact with was fucking gorgeous. He had the delicate, ethereal qualities of somebody who would have been stunning whatever their gender was. His curly blonde hair shone like liquid gold, cascading down his petite shoulders in a waterfall of gleaming splendor. He possessed eyes that were large enough to seem more suited to a woman's face. But what was most remarkable about them was the irises. They were purple, not a purplish blue, but a bright, hypnotic amethyst hue that made me think of the cosmic mysticism of space. Reginald Balvercroft, at your service. The man greeted me in a voice that was refined, without feeling overbearingly posh. Welcome to my home. I hope that you leave something of the happiness you bring with you. My boyfriend turned into a monster, and then I killed him, I grumbled. I don't know what I brought with me, but it sure as fuck isn't happiness. If he was put off by my bluntness, then he didn't let it show. Major Balvercroft tells me that you were a veritable killing machine in Zhao. Balvercroft had a slow, nonchalant way of speaking. She painted a vivid picture for me. Mountains of skulls and oceans of blood. I'm impressed. I'm nothing special. I shrugged as I spoke. Point the gun and pull the trigger. It's not rocket science. There was something abnormal about Reginald Balvercroft. In theory, he was a man of vastly above average attractiveness, with his elfin features and warm smile. Yet, being in his presence made me feel a sense of eerie unease. His skin was too smooth, his eyes too bright, and his luscious hair was too perfect. Reginald looked like somebody being viewed through a heavily filtered photograph, rather than a living being of flesh and blood. His chest didn't rise and fall with the rhythm of breathing, instead remaining inert and rigid. Reginald's clothes appeared to be tailored to his exact measurements, the rich blend of decadent fabrics tightly hugging the curves and contours of his svelte body. I have need of killers, Balvercroft told me, more than researchers these days. I've been forced to mold the society into a new shape by these trying times. Isolde is a killer too, I reminded him, as much as she likes to pretend she isn't. Isolde is a capable warrior, but the death of her brother still shackles her, Balvercroft replied. From what I've heard, you have no such shackles. The society needs people who can kill without hesitation. The Grand Viceroy called you terrorists, I said flatly. The Zavashi occupation is a regime of terror, Reginald replied. We were knowledge seekers, but Kefiru has forced us to become freedom fighters. We are irrefutably Gultiska's most extensive archive of knowledge of the supernatural, which is why we know how dangerous Major Farhad's plot to exploit the Tildrake is. Zayden said something about mist, I stated. He said she would let the Tildrake rampage across Gultiska if it meant creating more of that freaky fucking mist. Zavashi call it Ursha, Balvercroft explained, but the Tildrake call it Silphasil, which means lifeblood in Gultisgrake. When the vapors are harvested into liquid, it possesses incredible properties. Not only is Ursha a clean, renewable source of energy, but it can also be used for devastating acts of destruction when properly utilized. The Grand Viceroy isn't concerned about the safety of Gultiska if she can present Kefiru with a weapon that could topple Hester Scylla. Zavashi and Hester Scylla had been mortal enemies since even before the Shadow War. The whole reason Zavashi had occupied Gultiska was because the Commodore government was considering bringing us into the People's Union of Hester Scylla. Whatever treaties they may have signed, both powers still salivated at the thought of destroying the other. Typical bloody politician, I grumbled, throwing everybody else under the bus so that she can climb a little higher up the ladder. Reginald allowed himself a hum of laughter. Like everything else about him, his soft chuckling was without flaw, ebbing and flowing with a crisp rhythm that had a song-like quality to it. This is going to sound crazy, but today has been a crazy day, I said. What is your deal? You're not a person. You're a painting that's come to life. Everything about you is fucking perfect. If I saw a picture of you, I'd bet it had been digitally altered. I've met people who ooze beauty, but you are beauty. You're very kind, Reginald replied with a smile that was the ideal blend of friendly and mischievous, which twirled across his features without wrinkling the flesh beneath his eyes. I'm not trying to flatter you, I told him directly. I'm acknowledging that you exude perfection in a way that no human being possibly could. So what are you? A Tildrake? Something else? Oh. A flash of realization swelled in his rich amethyst eyes. You really see me? Balvercroft delicately drummed his left hand against the palm of his right. Most people are content to gaze upon a handsome face without questioning it, he told me. They're not interested in what hides beneath the mask, only the mask itself. I imagine your own guise of humanity has given you the insight to know when you're looking at a charade. You didn't answer my question, I stated firmly. And I never will, he admitted. There are puzzles that aren't meant to be solved, and riddles without answers. Not everything can be unearthed and charted. It doesn't matter what I am. All that matters is that both of us want Grand Viceroy Majafar to fall. The goal that binds us will have to suffice for now. If I'm going to fight for you, I want to know what I'm fighting for, I asserted. You will fight for what you've always fought for, Miss Turner-Wickroof, Balvercroft replied. You'll fight for yourself. You are a killer, Bethan. You've always been a killer. Another glowing endorsement of my big heart and benevolent nature. You're making an awful lot of assumptions about somebody you've just met, I said irritably. Besides the testimony of Major Balvercroft, who I trust implicitly, I have a number of documents that paint a very comprehensive picture, Reginald told me. A school report that describes you as a bully with no regard for rules, a youth caution for shoplifting, an incident report detailing how a boy of 16 gave you, then 12, 2 black eyes after you tricked his sister, then 9, into drinking a bottle full of your urine. In my defense, that was fucking hilarious, I laughed. Maggie Maddox had been a snotty little teacher's pet with a ridiculous name and a laugh that sounded like the asthmatic wheezing of a pug. Getting pummeled by her brother was a small price to pay for her bawling her stupid eyes out when I told her that she downed a bottle of my piss. Next we have my personal favourite, a written complaint from your form tutor to your guardian, Victoria Wickroof, after you convinced the other children that you had cancer, Balvercroft pressed on, swiftly followed by an official warning from the Word and Police Service for attending a demonstration organised by the New Commodores, which escalated into a riot. Interestingly, Zayden was in the New Commodores before they were forcibly disbanded. You're really going to criticise me for marching against Ketheru when you're leading an anti-Zavashi terrorist cell? I skipped over the fact that I'd attended the rally because I was itching for a fight, not because I was a teenage anarchist. All of this before you were 18, Reginald remarked. Would you like me to keep going? Everything you've mentioned is written from someone else's point of view, I argued. Nobody cares about why I did those things. I know why you do the things that you do, Reginald told me. Because you are full of hate, not just anger, but a hate so intrinsic to who you are that it sings in your bones. There are other thoughts and emotions that form the sum of who you are, yet nothing is as fundamental to your composition as that savage, roaring hatred. You can't just reduce a person down to a single trait, I snapped fiercely. I could just as easily whip out some random reports to paint a dishonest picture of who you are. No, you couldn't, the purple-eyed man countered. I make it my business not to leave a paper trail. What else have you got on me? He was quickly getting on my fucking nerves. When I had my first period, a sharp, blade-like smirk twirled across Reginald's lips. You're a dangerous, hateful maniac, with next to no regard for the well-being of others, the Grand Master of the Balvercroft Society said tersely. To put it in crude terms, you're a shit. Fury, mixed with humiliation, swirled around in my stomach like a whirlpool. I could feel the heat burning in my cheeks. If someone had spoken to me like that when I was with Sifrafe, I'd have shot them. If I'm such a shit, why do you want my help? I spat back at him. We are at war, Balvercroft answered, and hate is a very effective weapon. I was given less baggy clothes to change into, and a warm shower, I was pleasantly surprised to find out that the Balvercroft Society's apparently infinite network of spindly tunnels and subterranean hollows included a small dugout that had been converted into a shower cubicle. Making the most of the shampoo and soap I had been given, I eagerly welcomed the feeling of hot water gushing over me as I undertook a much-needed wash. My brief flicker of happiness was snatched away when I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the mirror. My belly bulged outwards in a way that made me want to rip my skin off. There was an unappealing outbreak of lumpy red spots around my mouth, and my eyebrows were in dire need of a trim. Oh, and the glutinous pulp that had been my boyfriend was smeared all over me. A venomous blend of rage and despair burned its way through me, as if my veins had filled with lava. I was overcome with the burning impulse to break something. I attacked the carmine mulch with my scrubbing brush, madly scouring my own skin until it split apart and blood bubbled up to the surface. I warned you. The scratchy tittering of the Black Bride floated through my mind. You think yourself invulnerable, yet even the most cutthroat killers have weak spots. Letting out a scream of raw, white-hot rage, I chucked the brush at the wall, then collapsed on the floor in a miserable heap. I dug my fingernails into my scalp, ripping out a clump of pale blonde hair, whilst hot water continued to spurt over me. Humans are so predictable, the voice leered. You are defined by the same repeating patterns. You and your griff, Zayden and his den, the mewling sycophant, drawn to the darkness of a monster in human skin, begging for a scrap of love from the loveless. Your kind entomb yourselves in principles and rules, yet you adore those with the blackest hearts. A memory stirred in my mind, like a corpse bubbling up to the surface of putrid waters. Griff and I curled up in bed, with unmedicated apocalypse blasting through his speakers. Griff kissed me on the forehead. I don't want this to just be a fling anymore, he had said. I'm fucking in love with you, Bethy. Tell me if you don't love me. It will hurt, but I need to know. I love you too, I had said out of reflex. If only he'd known how much I'd end up hurting him. I'm going to kill you, I hissed, repeating every word within my thoughts, so I was certain the Black Bride could hear me. I'm going to grind every atom of you into oblivion until even the faintest whisper of what you were is eradicated from existence. You don't frighten me, little girl, the monster cackled back at me. I hold the age of the stone beneath your feet and the stars in the sky. I was slaughtering humans for fun the second you miserable wretches crawled out of your cradle of slime. I have vanquished the most powerful of my kind, and your kind a little more than a speck of dust in an endless cosmos. Before me, you are an infant screaming at the face of God. Griff had been my shoulder to lean on. Griff had been my rock. Griff had been mine. It had taken Griff from me, and I was going to make sure the Black Bride knew suffering that eclipsed comprehension. Keep on yapping, I snarled. I'm going to fucking bury you. We children have a saying, the Black Bride replied. Color sira mawir kalmenuin. It means hollow words are worth naught. We humans have a saying, I told the Tildrake. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. It means you fucked with the wrong bitch. The voice of the Black Bride went silent. Once I'd scrubbed off all of the final flecks of my dead boyfriend's blood, I dressed myself in the dark jeans, slick leather jacket, and somewhat too tight purple shirt that had been laid out for me. Reginald Balvercroft requested the presence of me, Zayden, and Major Blygraph. The meeting was held in one of the Society's innumerable underground rooms. I was quickly becoming accustomed to living in a maze of twisting tunnels, even if I had an angry red bruise from the many times I'd whacked my head on rocky ceilings. We took our seats around a round wooden table, surrounded by 4 walls of jagged stone. Like the door to Reginald's chambers, a scattering of Gultisgrig runes were carved into the surface of the massive wooden table. "Okay," Zayden called out to the room. "Shag, marry, kill." A disapproving look from Isolde quickly shut him up. Reginald Balvercroft looked like a king sat upon a throne as he addressed us, emanating an aura of regal splendor. His posture was firm and unbending. "What we discuss does not leave this room," Balvercroft instructed. "I can't dismiss the possibility that Pritiara has spies amidst the Society." He was dressed in a flowing purple gown that matched the decadent color of his eyes.
"Do we know what the hell bitch's next move is?"
Isolde asked.
"We do,"
Reginald nodded.
"For all of her cunning, Pritiara Majafahad's limited understanding of the old ways is her biggest weakness. She knows how to defend herself against mundane enemies. She has a stunted grasp of magical ones. With the help of our inside man, Rosenfon, we've been able to find out what Pritiara is planning."
I was still wrapping my head around this secret world of monsters and magic. It was a shame that I was in such a shit mood that I couldn't appreciate the wonder of it all.
"So,"
Zayden slipped his small fingers together.
"what is she planning?"
Reginald's voice became somber, yet unyielding in its determination.
"As all of you know, we are mere weeks away from Feyfala, a celebration so dear to the people of Gultiska that it is one of the only traditions Savashi hasn't snuffed out,"
Balvercroft recounted.
"Feyfala is when nostalgia for a free Gultiska reaches its zenith. The Grand Viceroy plans to use these celebrations to manipulate her contacts in the Gultiska Liberation Army into destroying the national grid. Gultiska will be plunged into darkness, and in the chaos that follows, the High Chancellor will grant Pritiara the power to impose martial law."
I felt as if the floor had been yanked out from underneath me. The weight of impending doom was so relentless that it infested every cell in my body, tearing through me like a gluttonous cancer. She's going to start a fucking civil war, I realized, and she'll have Kefaru's wholehearted support.
"The devastation that follows will be like an endless feast for the Tildraig,"
Reginald said with a solemn nod.
"Gultiska will be smothered beneath a blanket of mist, and she'll have enough Urshar to create weapons of mass destruction that can blow Hestasilla into oblivion."
A long, painful silence fell over the room. The gravity of what Reginald was telling us felt like the crushing pressure at the darkest depths of the ocean.
"So, how do we stop her?"
Major Blygraph asked eventually.
"The way we've always talked about,"
Balvercroft replied.
"We need Maromark's stash of Ariagentum."
Zayden and Isolde exchanged a skeptical look. "What have those hateful fucks got to do with Ariagentum?" I asked.
"Their leader, the so-called Uberadar, lives in the ruins of the Shrawaig Asylum,"
Zayden explained.
"Shrawaig sits on top of the biggest stash of Ariagentum in the world. Maramark has been trading it to international crime syndicates for drugs and guns for years. It's one of the ways they've been able to grow so quickly."
The self-proclaimed Uberadar was a man called Naylor Nassadwir. He had taken the title Uberadar from the old Gultisgrig word for chieftain. Nassadwir, like the rest of his gang of bigoted fuckheads, was obsessed with the imagery and terminology of ancient Gultiska. Once upon a time, Naylor Nassadwir had been one of those shadowy billionaires whose name only meant something to hardcore finance bros. He had fallen into the public eye when a reporter got their hands on a tape of him doing some upsetting things with a bottle of lube a knife, and a victim of human trafficking who had perhaps the worst luck in the history of the universe. Such depravity was distasteful even to our Devashi oppressors, who launched an investigation that revealed that Nassadwir had been funneling money into far-right militias abroad and tampering in foreign elections. Many of his assets were seized, and he was given a slap on the wrist in the form of a hefty fine and 6 months in prison. When Naylor Nassadwir resurfaced, it was as the new leader of Gultiska's most infamous hate group. Nassadwir was not the founder of Marromark, but he was the leader that had transformed a ragtag gang of racists into a terrifying fascist militia. The more Zivashi pressed its boot heel down on our necks, the more Gultiskans turned to extreme methods of resistance. I'm guessing that the plan is to use the Ariagentum to make weapons to fight the Tildrake, I reasoned. But Marromark aren't going to hand it over if we ask nicely.
We don't have the numbers to take on Marromark in their headquarters, even with Rosenfund's help,
his elder granted.
It's the reason we've never attempted this before. It would be a suicide mission.
There is no other way to beat Pritiara and Tildrake,
Reginald declared.
If we don't act now, Gultiska is doomed.
That doesn't change the logistics of the situation,
his elder shot back.
All the noble intentions in the world won't make us bulletproof.
Reginald Balvercroft's amethyst eyes shifted from Major Blygraft to me.
That is where Miss Turner Wickroof comes into play,
he announced to the room.
I propose that Bethan undertakes the Angel's Crucible.
Satan slammed both hands flat on the table. He was a small and skinny man, but in that moment he radiated relentless force.
No way,
he barked in protest.
You may as well just kill her yourself. Nobody has ever succeeded, Reginald,
his elder said in a noticeably calmer manner.
I'm all for thinking outside of the box, but this feels like piecing away apple bodies.
Anyone mind telling me what the Angel's Crucible is? I sharply cut in. People talking about me like I'm not in the room makes me want to hide broken glass in their shoes.
It is a rite older than the society,
Reginald told me.
Something created by the druids of ancient Gultiska. The Balvercroft Society was founded during the times when the old religion was still the dominant faith in the country. My forebearer, Virusum Balvercroft, left us with an extensive collection of documents detailing the druid spells and practices.
We have never successfully recreated it, Zayden let out a furious shout. Both times we ended up burying our friends.
That doesn't necessarily mean we failed to recreate the Angel's Crucible, Mr. Colt,
Reginald argued.
It means that Mr. Davis and Miss Lewis failed the Crucible.
Either way, they died, Zayden shot back, his voice burning with rage.
You both make valid points, his elder put forward. It is possible that Captain Colonel Wickroof would succeed where the others failed. Yet the risk is high. It is not our decision to make. It is the captain's.
I'm sure that the rush of surprise I felt showed on my face. It had been a long time since his older Blygraft spoke of me with anything akin to respect. Tell me about the Crucible, I said. I can't make an informed decision if I don't know the details. Zayden threw up his hands, his frustration obvious, but stayed silent.
Centuries ago, the druids trapped an especially powerful Tildrake at the heart of these caves,
Balvercroft explained.
It is called Thuntherep. According to my ancestors' research, a ritual was created where the most...
Reginald paused for a moment, searching for the right phrase.
Cutthroat druids would drink Thuntherep's blood, which sent them into a kind of out-of-body trance,
he continued.
Those who could endure whatever happened to them, whilst they were under the influence of Thuntherep's blood, would return to their bodies wielding magic similar to that of the Tildrake, a power called Tilvash.
And those who failed died screaming, Zayden cut in.
Let's not leave out that cheerful detail.
Our comrades who attempted the Angel's Crucible died in excruciating agony.
Isolde nodded in agreement.
I don't claim to understand the supernatural, but neither Glendale Lewis nor Idris Davis were supposedly this Ragora. If the goal of the Crucible is to wield the power of the Tilderig, your unusual connection to them must count for something, Captain Turner Wickruth.
Magic is chaos given metaphysical form, Zayden grunted in annoyance. We can guess at the rules all we want, but at the end of the day, we're still fumbling in the dark. We would stand a greater chance of emerging victorious if you started using your gifts again. Reginald spoke in a somewhat accusatory tone. You call them gifts, Zayden growled. I call them a surefire way to get my friends killed.
Miss Turner Wickruth isn't Mr. Holgeroth.
Reginald made direct eye contact with Zayden as he spoke.
You can't let your fear of—
Come over here and see how fucking scared I am! Zayden's voice was dripping with venom as he snarled at Reginald. I mulled over the information I'd been given, carefully considering what the others had told me. My fear of death paled before the relentless flames that raged in my core, screaming for bloody vengeance. If I had a chance to make my enemies suffer, I was going to seize it with both hands. I was going to make the Black Bride pay for taking Griff away from me. I was going to make Tiara pay for ruining my life. I was going to make Zavashi regret ever setting foot in Kultiska. I've made my decision, I told the others. I'll do it. I was told the preparations needed to be made before the ritual began, whilst the rest of the Balvercroft society busied themselves with their occult fuckery. I waited in one of the smaller underground caves. There was a strange cube-shaped lamp hanging from the ceiling. It gave off pulsing waves of soothing golden light, like a heart pumping out blood. A surprising serenity settled over me, as if the lamp were filling the cave with calmness as well as its gentle light. Danger lay ahead of me, yet in that moment I felt oddly at peace. It had been the same when I'd worked as a mercenary. There was something reassuring about knowing I was about to go into battle. I think I liked the structure. What good would hysterics have done me? Worry was not a luxury I could afford. Nobody was coming to save me. So what was the point of screaming for help?
I admire your bravery,
Isolde Blygraph's voice called out as she stepped into the room.
There is nothing more noble than putting yourself in danger for the benefit of others.
I didn't feel like telling her I was motivated by vengeance, not altruism. I suppose I had to stop being a selfish bitch eventually, didn't I? I mumbled. She leant back against a wall of rough stone, fanning the fingers of her flesh and blood hand over the smooth metal of her prosthetic arm.
I'm sorry about your partner, Captain,
she said with genuine sincerity.
It was a fucking horrible thing to happen.
That really wasn't a conversation I wanted to have. Any advice for the Crucible? I asked, swiftly trying to change the subject.
A cold shower can be good for anxiety,
the big woman mused.
There are probably less chilly ways to calm your nerves, though.
I don't suppose you've got any rum? I gave a weak smile.
Or snow? Our selection here is pretty pathetic,
Isolde smirked.
I could maybe find us some beers.
I'll pass, I told her. Beer tastes like stale bread to me.
Your beer tastes like stale bread, the Major said with an easygoing laugh. I don't miss much about Rostia, but I do miss the beer.
I had a friend whose family came from Rostia, I murmured, thinking of Marja. I don't think she really remembered Rostia, though. They moved around a lot before they settled in Gultiska.
Marja Jankowski.
The one I had let go.
The one who turned my heart to ice. I never knew Rustia before Hestisilla, Isolde confessed. We were taught not to think of ourselves as a country, but as part of a glorious union. My brother, Miguel, and I were conscripted into the People's Militia as teenagers. At the time I thought that we were sharing some magnificent purpose. I truly believed in Hestisilla's dream for the world.
What changed? I asked. Sadness settled on the Major's hard features.
Miguel and I were fighting in Begovinia,
she told me in a voice marred by sorrow.
Our position was being overrun. Defeat seemed likely. There were enough of us still in the fight that there was a chance we'd snatch back victory, though.
I watched Isolde's hands clench into fists.
Hestisilla wasn't interested in chances. They had decided that we'd already lost. She sneered as she spoke. They dropped a banshee bomb on our position. I suppose destroying our enemy was more important than we were.
He survived, I nodded slowly. Mikhail didn't. A cold, humorless laugh barked out of Isolde.
That shattered the illusion for me, she explained. I realized that we had never mattered to Hestisilla. We were just bodies for their war machine. Once I figured that out, I thought I may as well fight for myself. I defected, hiked from Degovinia to Marajak, and signed up to the first mercenary company I found. Sith Wraith.
It was odd seeing any sort of vulnerability on Isolde's face. I'd only ever known her to be a stern, rigid woman who oozed militancy. Glimpsing the humanity in her felt like watching a dog walking upright. Even as a mercenary, you never struck me as somebody who was only out for themselves, I told her. She shrugged her massive shoulders.
I guess I couldn't shake off my programming, Isolde admitted. It had been drilled into me since birth. Hestisilla used to play propaganda broadcasts on a loop whilst we slept in our barracks. We were being indoctrinated with drivel about the righteousness of the People's Union, even in our dreams. Subconsciously, I suppose I still wanted to be fighting for more than a paycheck.
I was starting to understand Major Balvercroft a little better. Her disdain for my special brand of opportunistic brutality made more sense. Even her hatred for my liberal relationship with clean fighting was easier to grasp. During the Trangao massacre, I must have reminded her of the generals that had dropped a banshee bomb on her brother. There is no more, I replied. Life doesn't care about us. Destiny isn't looking out for us. The only glorious purpose is a paycheck. The steely, loathing expression I was used to returned to Isolde's rugged features.
What happened to you?
Disgust oscillated in her eyes.
Why are you so empty of goodness? You mistake cruelty for intelligence.
I could feel my body vibrating with fury. Well, thinking happy thoughts bring my boyfriend back to life, Isolde, I hissed. If Mikhail had been smiling when a bomb landed on him, would that have given him some magic fucking force field? Any understanding that had begun to stretch between us burned away the second those words left my mouth.
I used to think you derived pleasure from the suffering of others,
Isolde snarled.
But you aren't a sociopath. You're a frightened, pathetic little girl. You're not some fearless monster. You're a terrified child.
I felt as if I were made from glass, and Major Balvercroft was a hammer that had smashed me into countless broken shards. Anger and sorrow filled my mouth like blood gushing out of a tongue that had been bitten in half. A frightened child who's still breathing, I shot back, utterly driven by impulse and emotion. Was there anything left of your brother after that bomb went off? Or did you have to scoop up his ashes with a dustpan? I was expecting the Major to hit me, but instead her stare turned from rage to weariness.
You have a trial to prepare for, Captain Turner Wickruff,
Isolde said in a cold, tired voice.
I won't waste any more of your time with my childish philosophy. Isolde would paint me as a coward in the guise of a monster. She was woefully mistaken. I was a beast of hunger and yearning. I was a predator that took what it wanted, without hesitation. I was a slumbering dragon, and when I awoke, the world would burn in my inferno.
A few hours later, Reginald came striding into the cave, a bright scarlet cape fluttering behind him.
"We're ready,"
he announced. I followed him down a labyrinth of twisting tunnels until we arrived in a yawning, hall-like cavern. My eyes raced past the vast swathe of hard rock, settling on the grotesque oddity that sat in the middle of the cave, bound in silvery chains of Ariagendum. Thunthorep was unlike the other Tildraig I'd seen, where they were lithe and skeletal. Thunthorep was a swollen heap of rotting flesh, with putrid bulges rippling across its revolting form. Sickly lumps burst out of its engorged body, leaking pus-like discharge in sputtering rivers. Its skin was a revolting tapestry of gangrenous green and necrotic purple, whilst flailing, squid-like tentacles stretched out across the craggy ground. A single, enormous eye peered out of Thunthorep's massive body. The eye was crisscrossed with angry red veins, and its dark pupil bore into me as soon as I stepped into the cavern.
Thalrakora!
Thunthorep wheezed in a slow, raspy voice.
After centuries of waiting, you have found me.
It took every iota of strength I had to stop me from throwing up. You want me to drink this thing's blood? I groaned with disgust, the stink of rot shooting up my nostrils.
"This is the only way,"
Reginald said apologetically.
Take me inside.
Thunthorep's voice echoed through the cave, yet it had no mouth that I could see.
We will become one.
I struggled to find the words to describe the bridge that flowed between the Tildraig and me in that moment. It was like a sudden rush of energy, burrowing through my flesh and down into the metaphysical tissue of my spirit. For one fleeting blip, I understood Thunthorep in a way that shouldn't be possible. My grasp of the universe widened, and an impossible clarity flooded my mind. It was as if an ant had suddenly gained the cognition of a human. It was like a scurrying rat being able to grasp rocket science. It was as though I was a pig that had become aware I existed to be slaughtered by a farmer. Then, that brief moment ended, and my comprehension was snatched away. My head reeled as I clawed at knowledge that was no longer mine. How can I explain what that felt like? How could you explain algebra to a bumblebee?
You are so beautiful.
Thunthorep told me.
Beautiful in a way that no human ought to be.
As my perception was stripped away, I began to feel doubt wriggling in my gut. Was I the unstoppable, cold-hearted killer I thought I was? Or was Isolde right? Was I a frightened little girl, hiding my terror behind a mask of ruthless confidence? I couldn't deny that there were quiet moments where I questioned the front that I presented to others. Was I a wolf in sheep's clothing? Or a gazelle that thought it was a lion? I remembered something Marja had said to me once, during a drunken row. "You act like this tough bitch, but you're the most insecure person I know. You're so desperate for everyone to like you, and you're so scared they won't that you push people away before they can hurt you." Was she right? Perhaps I painted myself as a villain to create a wall between the horrors of the world and my fragile,
anxiety-riddled core. Reginald removed the long, needle-esque knife from his belt. With a single slash, he sliced into Thunderep's bloated body, yielding a rush of dark, curdled blood. It was so thick and clotted that it reminded me of period blood. Balvercroft caught the congealed blood in a plain silver cup before handing the chalice over to me.
I suggest drinking it quickly, before you have too much time to think about it,
Reginald advised. A hurricane of splintered memories went racing through my mind. I thought about my childhood, viciously ended in a storm of gunfire. I thought about the choking mundanity of working in Ramakadash's stuffy office. I thought about the devastating power that would soon be mine to wield. I am a dragon, I whispered to myself. I will burn my enemies to ash. Smothering a repulsed gag, I raised the cup to my lips and forced myself to drink.
Let the games begin.
One moment I was standing on solid ground. Then I was hurtling down through a bottomless void, air rushing past my face as darkness swallowed me. I was an astronaut lost in the abyss of space, spinning through a vacuum that stretched on forever. There wasn't so much as a single speck of light in the desolate blackness that devoured the physical world. I had never felt more alone than I did in that moment, reduced to a speckle of cosmic debris, drifting aimlessly through a cold and empty nothingness. I wondered if I had died, and this indifferent oblivion was the afterlife. Then, all of a sudden, I felt something firm take shape beneath my feet. I had gone from falling to standing, and tiny pinpricks of humming white light flickered into being above me. It was as if I was stumbling through a dark basement, and somebody had switched on a blinking light bulb.
Welcome to the void,
A familiar voice called out. I see terror cut through every cell in my body. There was no way it could be her. That wasn't possible. She was fucking dead. Marja? I sputtered in disbelief. Marja Jonkowski slipped out of the void, fiery red hair tumbling down her shoulders in messy curls. She had mismatched eyes, one chocolatey brown and one ethereal green. Marge's skin held the pale tone of freshly settled snow, vividly contrasted against the burning red hue of her hair. She was still a teenager. I'd felt so grown up back then. But now, she looked like a child to me. You're dead, I blurted out.
thanks to you.
She replied with a sharp laugh.
You didn't even have the guts to look me in the eye when you killed me. You had to wait until my back was turned.
That hot, panicked confusion that Marja had always brought out in me went surging through my body, as if I was a teenager all over again. You forced me to kill you, I shouted back at her. You used me, you humiliated me, and then you tossed me aside like I was fucking trash. Do you have any idea how that made me feel? Marja's big, orbular eyes looked me up and down.
I see you're still an entitled little cunt.
She checked me out in the bitchiest way imaginable.
Well, maybe not so little anymore. I'll always be little. I'll never get to grow up. You took that away from me.
You're not even real, I growled. You're just some illusion conjured up by the ritual. You're not Marja. You're a shitty photocopy. A cruel smirk curled at the corner of Marja's lips, like a fishing hook.
What does it say about you that they chose the face of the crush you murdered years ago to torture you? And not the boyfriend you just lost?
The thing that wore Marja like a suit of skin taunted me.
I suppose anyone who makes the mistake of loving you is going to end up dead eventually.
Marja never loved me, I barked at her. She just used me. Not Marja rolled her eyes.
I did love you, you silly cow.
The phantasm replied.
I just didn't want to fuck you. It is possible to love someone platonically.
Rage was surging through my veins like blistering magma. She mocked me, I screamed. She belittled me.
I was a child.
Fake Marja hissed back.
A child who came from a country where being gay gets you chemically castrated. How did you think I was going to react, dickhead?
I shook my head, tears welling in my eyes. I was a child too, I shouted. Why does all the blame land on me?
Because you killed me, you fucking monster.
Not Marja growled.
Do you know how much pain my brother still holds in his heart because of what you did? You didn't just end my life. You ruined his.
I hadn't thought about Marek Jankowski in years. Life is cruel. Life is callous and bleak and utterly fucking merciless. My heart was banging in my chest, and my skin felt as if it was burning. She was lucky to die when she did. There is never anything kinder waiting around the corner.
I forgot how much you fucking yammer on.
The phantasm groaned.
I should have told you that you talk too much. You need to learn to shut up. Nothing in that warped brain of yours needs saying. I suppose being a self-obsessed chatterbox is the least of your crimes.
I won't apologize for what I did, I firmly insisted. She thought she could manipulate me without consequence. Marja died by her own hand. The scowl on fake Marja's face warped, becoming an uncanny grin. The grin spread far wider than should have been possible, cutting through her cheeks and reaching up to her eyes. The flesh of her face retreated as if it were water, revealing rows of pointed, fang-like teeth. Not Marja's face had become a disturbing parody of a human being, dominated by a grin that split her likeness like the slash of a blade. I knew you'd be fun, a scratchy, grotesque voice spilled out of fake Marja. Now, I get to see how much fun you really are. As if it were clay being pulled in the hands of a sculptor, the thing that dressed in Marja's flesh shifted and swirled. I thought of the old legends from the time of the Druids that spoke of monsters lurking in the depths of the woods who could change their shape like a person would change clothes. The noise of squirming flesh and cracking bone ricocheted through the void. Marja's mismatched eyes became green. Her fiery hair turned sandy blonde, and her pale skin wrinkled, as if it were worn by age and hard labor. Her body stretched and bulged, feminine curves swelling into rock-solid brawn. A towering, beefy man in his early 40s stood in the place of the petite teenager. I knew it was a trick. I knew this was just another one of the Tildrake's wicked ploys. I knew he wasn't real. That didn't stop a stab of yearning from ripping into my heart. Hello, darling. A duplicate of my dad said with a bright smile. I've missed you so much. Some distant part of me longed for him to hold me. It was that deep, primordial splinter of my soul that still believed in goodness and miracles. I forced down the nostalgic part of me that wanted nothing more than to hug the imposter, calling upon everything in me that was callous and cruel. Is that the best you can do? I spat. Is this the oh-so-difficult challenge that I have to overcome? I'm starting to think the last two idiots who tried this were just fucking stupid. Every ounce of strength that I possessed hoped that I was being convincing. I was desperately running out of strength to call upon. It's me, darling, the pretender insisted. It's your daddy. My daddy was gunned down when I was 7, I retorted with a sneer. You aren't my dad any more than you were Marja a few seconds ago. You're an anglerfish with an incredibly unconvincing lure. All the rationalizations in the world couldn't quell the agonizing longing that stormed through me. But that didn't mean I was going to act on it. Wouldn't you like more time together? Fake Dad asked. Don't you want to hug your old man again? Why, do you want to leave me on the beach so you can piss the weekend away at the betting shop? I scoffed, disdain dripping from every word. Or maybe you want to spend my birthday money at the casino. Perhaps you want to take your kid to watch the pit fights again. I know I wasn't the perfect dad, the imposter began to say, but I quickly cut it off. You're not my dad. You're a boring magic trick. You're fucking nothing. We had some good times too, didn't we? Fake Dad looked at me with pleading, watery eyes. You remember when I got you that pirate hat for Faye Fowler? You loved that hat. You scampered around them woods for hours. Said your treehouse was a pirate ship called the Unicorn. I've never seen such a happy little girl before. It was the pink unicorn. I corrected the apparition of my father, even as my soul ached. My real dad would have remembered that. Fake Dad regarded me with a long, inquisitive stare, as if I were a product on a shelf, and he was assessing my worth.
As you wish.
A deep, rumbling voice boomed through the void.
Let us speak as equals.
The illusion of my dad melted out of existence, dissolving into a puddle of murky liquid that seemed to retreat into the darkness of the abyss. One final spike of wistful longing pricked my heart as I watched the apparition break apart. Marja was gone. Dad was gone. They were never coming back. They were no more likely to rise from their graves than my heart was likely to pick up its broken shards and put itself back together again. Suddenly, a violet light burned through the darkness, gleaming with such radiance that it made me squint. A humongous orb had roared into being, blazing high above me, like a purple sun that had brought life into the dark oblivion. A fleck of inky black churned at the center of the violet orb, a lone pinprick amidst the sea of flaming purple. The realization came over to me that it was a pupil, and the rolling violet sun was a single gargantuan eye. This was Finthrep as it had been, not a heap of rotting meat bound in chains, but a limitless, godlike creature that held dominion over the malice and wickedness of all living things. I was standing in the presence of a deity, and every atom in my body was shrieking beneath the divine weight that was crashing down on top of me.
The one you call Black.
Finthrep's voice had transformed from a pained wheeze into a clap of thunder.
It is the reason for my imprisonment. I have rotted away for centuries because of its cowardly scheme. In you, Lugora, I see a chance to escape captivity and smite my betrayer.
Tildred aren't all friends then, I asked.
Do you call all humans your ally?
Finthrep responded. I'm my only ally, I said. Everyone else is a tool that serves a purpose.
That is why you are perfect.
Finthrep's voice rumbled through the darkness.
And that is why the betrayer wants to enslave you. I do not offer you search. I offer you equality. Join with me, and we will bend this world to our whims.
I'd be an idiot to trust you, I told Finthrep. And if you're as powerful as you're boasting, why have you spent hundreds of years as a prisoner? I did my best to project an aura of badass victory, even as I was talking to a giant purple eyeball. I'd gotten used to burying my thoughts and feelings beneath my normal person disguised. Yet Thunthorpe seemed to be able to pull back that veil. When the eye fixed its gaze upon me, there was nothing I could do to hide from it.
I can taste your rage,
the Tildrake replied.
Your hunger for vengeance eclipses your reservation. You know that I can achieve that vengeance.
I can't achieve that vengeance if I'm fucking dead, I countered. I know that you killed the last 2 people that stood where I'm standing.
They were defeated.
Thunthorpe's booming voice told me.
You are perfect.
I bet you say that to all the girls, I smirked.
You drank my blood because you sought power.
Thunthorpe said.
I am offering you that power. Why do you hesitate to take it?
I want to know why the Tildrake won't stop kissing my fat yet shapely arse. I said flippantly, what is the Rigora? What makes me the Rigora? Is it a genetic thing? Do I come from a long line of Rigoras?
It is not a mantle that one merits.
Thunthorpe explained.
It is nothing so simple as to be passed down by blood. You are not the Rigora because of the circumstances of your birth, or forces beyond your control. You are the Rigora because of the choices you have made.
Pride blossomed in my chest. I wasn't a Nepo chosen one. I was a self-made harbinger of evil.
What my children never understood is that the Rigora is not a certainty.
Thunthorpe continued.
In the time before I was betrayed, I was considered by my children to be a nature.
I knew enough Gultiskrig to understand what it was saying. You were the Tildrakes. God.
A crude translation, but not entirely unfitting.
Thunthorpe observed.
They attributed divinity to my word. Beliefs became laws. Postulations became prophecies. When your ancestors went to war with my people, I mused at the notion of one who would traverse the gulf between springs and Tilgrave, as a man who knew the power of the Tilvash as perfectly as we did. They took this pseudo-cosmic from us, woven into the very fabric of existence, that Rigora would be born.
I found myself once again thinking of the legends of old Gultiska. In days of yore, my people had believed in twin deities, the goddess of the day and the god of night. The mother goddess, Rayragan, was said to be a woman fair, where the god of the night, Shadra, was a malevolent, monstrous beast. Could it be that there was some truth to those legends? Could Thunthorpe be the old god that my ancestors were so terrified of? Why did you want to... I paused to think of the right term. Bridge between humans and Tildrake.
My kind cannot exist without sentient life to feed from.
Thunthorpe clarified.
Just as humans need nourishment, we sustain ourselves on your pain and terror. Without this, there would be no self-esteem. A world without self-esteem would be as uninhabitable to us as a world without air breathing. The Tilgrave have always lived on the fringes of Gultiska, hiding in shadows and nightmares. Through the Rigora, I envision the world forged around this parasitical bond. I conceive of a civilization where humanity is shaped and ordered to feed the children.
And you want me to help you build that? I asked, my voice marred by skepticism. For all of its supernatural horror and eldritch mystery, I recognized the terrible god for what it was. A businessman. I was in the middle of a trade deal, and I wasn't going to sign my life away until all the cards were on the table.
Humans outnumber children immeasurably. Our individual strength means nothing in the face of your numbers. There is no empire we can build which your kind could not topple through sheer attrition. We need humans to be compliant and obedient. The Agora is the key to this obedience.
I let out a snort. Yeah, you can fuck right off, I sneered. As much as I hate everyone, I'm not going to reshape society to benefit the Tildrake. That doesn't benefit me. Now I knew what Thunthorpe wanted from me. I needed to find out what it could give me.
You are wrong.
Thunthorpe bluntly told me.
Look at Gortiska. Look at the world. Humans cultivate wealth and power by feeding off of each other. Workers give their time to their masters. Soldiers give their lives to their generals. Billions give everything to hundreds. You, Agora, are one of the tyrannized many. Through me, you would become one of the tyrannical few.
Dark delight pulsed inside my chest, like the purring of a kitten that had caught a fat bird. You know my wants, and I'm sure my weaknesses, I said. We aren't on even ground here. Give me something that levels the playing field. Thunthorpe was silent for a long, drawn-out moment.
Very well.
Its voice rumbled through the darkness. In a sudden flash of scorching light, a crystal appeared in front of me. It was a small, exquisitely smooth orb of blood red. A tear of vivid crimson pulsed at its heart, like a pupil peering out of an eyeball.
I told you that the Tildrake revered me as a Dwydasia.
Thunthorpe boomed.
What I did not tell you is that each Tildrake was fashioned from a piece of me. They exist because I made it so, and they are tethered to me through a link that cannot be broken.
You must make a killing in child benefits, I teased. Thunthorpe didn't laugh.
Wormag, who you call Black Bride, knew that to destroy me would be to destroy all Tildrake, which is why it conspired with your kind to imprison me.
Thunthorpe continued.
They bound my physical body in chains, whilst my soul was imprisoned within the vessel you see in front of you.
What's stopping me from smashing this little trinket and wiping you all out forever? I asked with a raised eyebrow.
My prison is wrought from Wormag's magic, and can only be unmade through its own hand.
Thunthorpe explained.
It split my body from my spirit to weaken me, and lessen me to a fraction of what I was.
I took the carmine crystal in my grasp, feeling the energy that hummed inside of it. What good is it to me, then?
I am putting all that I am in your grasp, Agora.
Thunthorpe clarified.
My body may rot and wither, yet my spirit lives within the orb. the orb which I shall entrust to you. In doing so, what remains of my power shall become yours.
The crystal thumped with a rhythmic heartbeat, waves of magical energy rippling out of it and into me. If you try and fuck me, you'll regret it. I poured every iota of courage that I possessed into my words, willing myself to sound like a ruthless, stone-cold bitch. I knew there was nothing I could realistically do to make the threat regret it, but I was determined not to show it.
I have no interest in deceiving you, Aurora.
The Ancient One told me.
Our goals are aligned. I will grant you the power of the Tilbosh, and you will break my chains.
I extended one hand outwards. All right then, I grinned. Make me a tyrant. A sudden, mind-shattering surge of energy slammed into me. I felt as if I had been trapped inside a boiling oven. My skin was so swamped by merciless heat that I could have sworn it was melting off of my bones. The fiery pain smothered any coherent thoughts in my head. I was burning alive, and all I could do was scream. I found myself lost in a memory, one I'd forgotten, one I'd forced myself to forget, one I'd buried. I stood in a dark room, a large sofa stretched from one wall to the other. Maybe once upon a time it was a grand piece of furniture, but rich scarlet had faded into dull red, and the fabric was splitting apart. A thin, almost skeletal woman sat on the sofa. Her hair was a messy bird's nest of knots and tangles. Dark bags drooped beneath her eyes, and her skin was withered with exhaustion. Victoria Whitgrove, my adoptive mother. Her clothes hung loosely off of her bony body, like the sofa. What was once a dazzling outfit had become withered and worn. "You all right, Mum?" I called out. Victoria turned to look at me with puffy, bloodshot eyes. I spotted the single piece of paper resting on the table in front of her. I spotted the bottle of wine without a glass to accompany it. I spotted the small plastic canister, its clinical white a stark contrast to the wilted hues that made up the rest of the room. The pieces slotted together in my mind, and my heart sank. Once there would have been a frantic rush of panic, but now it was a cold, weary disappointment. The black and white reality of my clinical mind crashed together with the deep despair in my soul. They seemed to cancel each other out, filling me with a bleak nothingness that ate away at the light inside of me. My grandfather used to throw the most spectacular parties in this house, Victoria murmured through cracked lips. Troops of dancers, fountains of sparkling wine, a guest list bursting with all the big shots and superstars. She let out a humorless, guttural laugh. "You're the only thing of value left in Amacrack, Betsy." A tired smile crinkled her face. "I think Grandad would have liked you. He wouldn't have cared that you're not a Whitgrove by blood. He'd have seen the Whitgrove spirit in you, and he'd have loved you just like I do." It felt like Mum spent half her life submerged in fantastical tales of her ancestors. My favourite had always been Dimnira Whitgrove, who was ripped apart by a mob of witch hunters, allegedly because she feasted on human flesh and bathed in blood.
Moving cautiously, I sat down next to Victoria. I wrapped one arm around her alarmingly skinny body, leaning myself gently against her. "We have the same spirit, Mum," I said softly. "You're a fighter, just like me." Victoria shook her head. "I'm not a fighter, Betsy." A tremble palpitated through her voice. "You know how everyone always tells you to follow your dreams. They never tell you how hard you'll have to fight to make them a reality. I wish someone had sat me down and told me to give up on my dreams. I wish somebody had made me realize how hard the fight would be." "Your life isn't over, Mum," I prodded. "A lot of artists don't make it until—" "Don't coddle me, Betsy," she cut me off. "By the dragon, look at the crumbling shithole we live in. This is what the world thinks my paintings are worth. My daughter lives in squalor, all because her mother never grew up." I pushed the wine bottle away from her. I found myself wishing that I could go home, without knowing what home even was. Did I long for the home that had been snatched away when soldiers gunned down my father? Or was it A. McGrag before Victoria had fallen apart? Had there ever really been somewhere I could call home? I was clawing at a door that had already closed, trying to grasp hold of a world that no longer existed. "What have you taken?" I asked in a delicate voice. "You must think I'm awfully selfish." Tears were starting to take shape in her bloodshot eyes. "I think that one should be allowed to be selfish. What else is there to life?" I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to slap her. I wanted to tell her how fucking selfish she was being. I'd already lost 2 parents. Did she really not give a shit about me? I held my tongue, even as it burned with venom. I let her keep talking, whilst I slipped one hand into my pocket. My fingers swept over the keys of the mobile, dialing the emergency services. "I think I would very much like to be a little girl again," Victoria mumbled. "I'd like to go back in time, knowing what I do now. I think my life could have been rather splendid if I had made different choices." I knew what Mum was feeling, because it was a feeling I had come to know all too well. The need to let go, to fling yourself into the abyss, and let everything else melt away. Not the desire to die, but the desire to feel anything, even unimaginable pain, to prove that you were alive. "I'm glad you made the choices you did," I told her. "If you hadn't, you might not be my mum." Victoria yawned, her eyelids fluttering shut. "I suppose you're right." Her voice was heavy with exhaustion. "I'd be awfully cross with myself if that happened." She curled up next to me, her body weighing next to nothing. Victoria rested her head in my lap, congealed saliva dribbling out of the corner of her mouth. "You rest now, Mum," I whispered. "Don't worry about tomorrow. You just rest." "I'm awfully fond of you, Betsy," Victoria murmured sleepily. I think that you're my masterpiece." I stroked her messy jumble of hair with one hand. "I don't want to be a masterpiece," I said to an empty room. "I just want to be a kid." I screamed as I was pulled back into the world. Pain, searing with a kind of ferocity that defied description, shrieked through every cell in my body. I felt as if fingers of boiling metal were tearing into my skin and burrowing down into my innards. In that moment, smothered beneath an ocean of unstoppable agony, I was sure that my body was going to rip apart. "Help her!" I heard Satan yelling. My vision was a blurry mess of wobbling shapes and hazy colors. An exceedingly muscular arm wrapped itself around my shoulders. "I've got you, Captain," Isolde reassured me. "You're alright. You'll pull through." Little by little, the unthinkable pain began to seep out of me. I felt as if a kettle of boiling water had been chucked over my head, and my flesh was raw with scalding burns. A single figure took shape in my blurry eyes, whilst the rest of the world remained fuzzy and formless. Reginald Balvercroft stood before me, an unyielding tower rising out of a sea of chaos.
"Welcome back to the land of the living, Miss Turner Wickgroof."
He greeted me with a thin smile. Gradually, the rest of the world materialized.
"We were so bloody worried." Zayden let out a relieved laugh. "When you started screaming, I thought you were a goner."
My lungs feel like somebody took a sheet of sandpaper to them, I groaned.
"I'm not surprised,"
Reginald replied.
"You've been screaming non-stop for several hours."
I blinked in confusion. "I've only been conscious for like a minute," I told him. "We moved you into the infirmary when the screaming started," Zayden explained. "We gave you a shot of morphine, but it didn't seem to do anything." I looked about the cave I had found myself in. It was mostly slanted rock and claggy earth, but there were a few tables cluttered with beakers and rudimentary tools. Some kind of squat, medical-looking machine sat in one corner, letting out a mechanical screech every few seconds as it groaned and juddered. The Balvercroft Society's infirmary was deeply unimpressive. "Just my luck to miss out on free morphine," I mumbled, gazing down at my hands. A quiet, inexplicable new impulse fizzled through my synapses. I couldn't comprehend the fine details, but I knew that something had been unlocked within the primordial matter of my being. As instinctively as I could flex my limbs, I beamed a message to the tips of my fingers. I felt the flesh of my hands rippling. It was like a rumbling wave tearing through a quiet ocean. Beneath my skin, muscles twisted and bone distended, as if it were malleable clay. My nails stretched outwards, smooth points extending into curved claws. Just as though I was a jungle cat, hook-like talons shot out of the ends of my fingers. I stared at my new claws, utterly dumbfounded by what I was seeing. "Huh," I mumbled. "That's new."